You know, when you go to a restaurant and you're handed this beautifully crafted menu, like it goes on and on about their deep commitment to farm-to-table values.
Right, the artisanal heritage of the ingredient.
Yeah, exactly. The undeniable passion of the head chef. So you order expecting an absolute revelation, and then the food arrives.
And it's cold.
Cold, bland, and, you can literally hear the kitchen staff screaming at each other through the swinging doors.
Oh, yeah, we've all been there.
Because the front of the house is selling this beautiful story, but in the back, the kitchen is on fire, and nobody actually knows how to chop an onion.
That is a perfect analogy.
Well, what happens when that exact same disconnect scales up to, like, our entire society? That structural failure is the focus of our deep dive today.
Yes, and we have a really fascinating text to guide us.
We do. We're looking at the preface and chapter 1 of a manuscript called the Diamond Civilisation. And our mission today is to extract its blueprint for bridging this massive glaring gap between what our institutions say and what they actually do.
What's fascinating here is how the text frames this hypocrisy. I mean, we usually view this gap between words and actions as just a cultural irritant,
Yeah,
right?
we complain about it to our friends.
Exactly. We roll our eyes at the corporate PR spin. But the author of this manuscript argues that this isn't just annoying, it is a profound structural vulnerability.
So it's not just bad marketing.
No, it is a fundamental civilizational failure when the presentation and the reality completely divorced from one another.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because modern society is basically floating between two totally incompatible worlds right now. On one side, you have the world of ideals.
The shiny menu.
Right, the shiny poetic menu. This is where we talk about values, purpose, integrity, compassion, justice. But on the other side, you have the world of operations.
The kitchen.
The kitchen. Budgets, incentives, timelines, logistics, raw skills, and real-world consequences. Historically, these two worlds were connected.
But today, they have drifted completely apart.
And when that happens, competence just evaporates.
The coherence of an institution just collapses. It loses its ability to adapt to new challenges because the people making the promises have absolutely no mechanical understanding of how to fulfill them.
And the manuscript brings some pretty heavy hitters to back this up, too, citing researchers who document this declining operational capacity across the board.
Like Brian Kaplan's work.
Yeah, Kaplan's work on credential inflation. I mean, we have more people with advanced degrees than ever before in human history.
Right. The ideals of education look great on paper.
But practically, the signaling mechanism is broken. People spend 4 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a piece of paper that says they are competent, but when they actually sit at a desk...
They don't know how to run a basic project.
Exactly. Or solve a novel problem.
Or consider David Graeber's concept of bureaucratic overload, which the text also points to.
Oh, you see this everywhere.
Everywhere. But especially in healthcare or higher education. I mean, a hospital might spend more of its budget on layers of administrators whose sole job is tracking compliance metrics rather than on the doctors and nurses actually treating patients.
Right. The administrative bloat completely chokes out the institution's ability to execute its core purpose.
And then throw in Tyler Cowen's Great Stagnation, this idea that our ability to actually innovate, to build big physical things or solve complex societal problems has basically just plateaued.
So if modern complexity is breaking these rigid structures, then the solution can't just be better management. It has to be a totally different shape of governance. Is that what this manuscript is trying to build?
That is the core ambition of the Diamond Civilization. The author provides a blueprint to reconnect the world of ideals with the world of operations.
Which is quite the promise.
It is, but crucially, they are clear that this is not some magical new pill invented in a vacuum. It's actually a synthesis of decades of established wisdom into a unified geometry.
Yeah, the author traces the origin of this synthesis to a specific moment, right? April 19, 2002.
Yes, that's when they realized there were profound connections between existing theories that academia usually just keeps in separate, locked silos.
So what does this all mean? To me, it sounds like the ultimate mixtape of governance theories. Just, all the greatest hits mashed onto one cassette.
That's a good way to put it.
But instead of just listing these thinkers, let's look at the mechanics. How do these theories actually build this bridge?
Well, let's look at two of the most vital ingredients in this synthesis, systems dynamics and cybernetics. The author pulls from Donella Meadows and the systems dynamicists.
Okay, what's the core idea there?
Systems dynamics teaches us that you cannot tweak one part of an institution without creating side effects somewhere else.
Right.
It's all about understanding stocks, flows, and feedback loops. You can't just mandate better customer service without looking at how the software the employees use limits their speed.
So everything is interconnected, and you have to map the whole machine.
Yes. And then you add in cybernetics, popularized by thinkers like Stafford Beer and Norbert Wiener.
Which sounds very sci-fi.
It does, but cybernetics is essentially just the science of effective organization and self-correction.
Okay.
In simple terms, a viable system needs sensory organs to detect pain or failure, and a brain to adjust behavior based on that pain.
So if an organization has no sensory organs, like if it silences bad news or hides bad data, it cannot self-correct.
Exactly. It will walk right off a cliff.
So the synthesis takes these abstract theories and gives them a usable structure. But I have to push back a little on the presentation here.
Sure, go ahead.
The author calls this framework the diamond. Why a diamond? Is this just geometric determinism? Like, does the shape actually matter to the process, or is it just a catchy name for a consultancy seminar?
The geometric language is essentially a heuristic device. It's a visual metaphor.
Okay.
When you are dealing with complex systems, visualizing cyclical relationships, oppositional tensions, and multidimensional integration is incredibly difficult for the human brain.
Oh, totally.
So the diamond shape helps practitioners map these out spatially. And because it's a map, it is also inherently fractal.
Meaning you can scale it up to a national government or shrink it down to a local charity, and the underlying geometry of the process applies exactly the same way.
Precisely.
Let's get into the actual machinery of this diamond. What are the moving parts? The author lays out an 8-step cycle, and I want to walk through this slowly because it really grounds the theory.
Let's do it.
Let's actually map these 8 steps directly onto our restaurant analogy from the beginning so you can visualize the mechanism.
That's a great way to test the model. So, step 1 is task. This is clarifying your purpose and intent.
So for the restaurant, the task is we want to serve a flawless farm-to-table heirloom tomato pasta.
Step 2 is plan. This is allocating resources and sequencing your actions.
Sourcing the local tomatoes, pricing the dish at $22, and scheduling 3 line cooks for the Friday dinner rush.
Step 3 is develop. This is where you actually build the skills, capacity, and structures needed to execute the plan.
So actually, teaching those 3 line cooks the precise knife skills and sauce reduction techniques required for the dish.
Which is where a lot of organizations stop.
Yeah, they train people once and assume the job is done.
But the diamond continues into the real world. Step 4 is implement, the actual execution under live conditions.
It's Friday night, the dining room is packed, the orders are flying in, the service starts.
Step 5 is assess, measuring the outcomes against what you intended in step 1.
The plates come back to the kitchen. Are they empty, or did the customers leave half the pasta uneaten?
Let's say they come back half-eaten.
A linear thinker stops here, yells at the cooks, and just tells them to work harder.
But the cyclical thinker moves to step 6, reflect.
Yeah.
Interpreting the causes of those outcomes and finding the patterns without blame.
Why did they come back uneaten? The chef tastes the leftover sauce? Oh, the new supplier's tomatoes are way more acidic than last week's batch, and the cooks didn't adjust the sugar to balance it out.
Which feeds directly into step 7, learn. Taking that reflection and translating it into a brand new organizational capability.
Creating a new mandatory kitchen protocol to taste and chemically balance every single batch of sauce before service begins, regardless of the recipe.
And finally, step 8, before looping back to the beginning character.
Wait a second, let me stop you right there. Character as a mechanical operational step.
Yes.
Usually, character is treated as this vague moral hope. It's the motivational poster in the break room with an eagle soaring over a mountain.
Right.
I have to push back here. You're saying if I just put a fundamentally selfish, toxic CEO through this 8-step cycle, the machine will magically spit them out as an ethical leader. That sounds incredibly naive.
This raises an important question, and it gets to the absolute core of why the diamond is different from standard management theories like Six Sigma.
How so?
Most technical models leave the human element implicit. They focus on data and efficiency. But the diamond structurally links ethical formation to the process itself.
Okay, but how?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, character isn't an input. You don't just hire good people and hope they stay good.
So it's not something you bring into the system, it's something the system produces.
Exactly. Character is the measurable outcome of what people and institutions become through repeated cycles of practice, honest feedback, and accountability.
Oh, wow.
To your point about the toxic CEO, the framework doesn't magically make them a saint. But if the institution forces them to constantly assess their failures honestly and learn from them without hiding the data.
If the sensory organs of the system are functioning?
Yes. That CEO either adapts to a standard of transparency or the system ejects them. Returning to your kitchen analogy, if the chef goes through the cycle, the kitchen develops a character of adaptability and quality control rather than a character of fear, blame, and hiding mistakes.
The framework reconnects skill with virtue.
It does.
If you practice dodging accountability every day, your institutional character becomes corrupt and fragile. If you practice honest reflection, your character becomes robust. So, if this 8-step cyclical model is this effective at building competence and character, why on earth do so many institutions fail to use it? The manuscript points the finger at what it calls a Newtonian trap.
The Newtonian or linear mindset. This is the outdated way of thinking that governs most of our modern systems, inherited from the Industrial Revolution.
So treating everything like a simple machine.
Right. It assumes the world is stable and predictable. It views reality as a series of isolated events that require direct reactions. A problem appears, we write a policy. A failure happens, we launch an inquiry. A crisis hits, we scramble a response.
It sounds like playing a massive game of whack-a-mole.
It really is.
You're just frantically swinging a mallet at the next crisis that pops out of the hole, totally exhausted, but you're never actually changing the game itself.
Exactly.
Cyclical governance, on the other hand, is like stopping the game for a second, studying the machine, and figuring out how to rewire the circuits so the moles stop popping up in the first place.
No. The linear system attempts to predict outcomes in a stable world. That is impossible now because our world is fast, interconnected, and highly nonlinear.
Right.
Cyclical systems transform chaotic reactivity into disciplined learning by emphasizing constant feedback. The text uses a very relatable example to highlight this contrast pandemic response.
Oh, yeah. I mean, think about the linear approach during a pandemic. It's basically just lockdown, wait, reopen.
And then a new variant hits a few months later.
And leadership acts completely surprised, like it's a brand new thing. So it's lockdown, wait, reopen again. They treat every single wave as a brand new, isolated crisis that requires a frantic, reactionary mallet.
Whereas a cyclical, diamond-based approach treats the pandemic as a continuous flow of information. You implement public health measures, assess the transmission data, reflect on the compliance patterns and economic impact.
You learn which interventions actually work in which specific communities.
Right. You adapt the measures and then refine and implement improvements for the next wave. You build institutional memory.
You build anticipatory capability. You're learning the shape of the wave before it crashes, rather than just drowning and then trying to invent a towel.
That's a great way to visualize it.
So we've seen how this theory works against massive crises, but earlier we talked about how this model is fractal, that it scales across vastly different parts of society. The text gives some brilliant real-world applications of this, starting with municipal water governance.
This is where the theoretical rubber really meets the road. A linear, reactive city treats its water infrastructure as a set-it-and-forget-it system.
They don't model long-term needs.
No, they defer maintenance to save budget money for pet projects. Eventually, a massive pipe bursts, the city floods, and they trigger emergency funding to patch the hole.
Accountability is entirely retrospective.
Yes. The institutional character becomes short-term, defensive, and crisis-driven.
But a diamond-based water authority acts completely differently. Their task is a 25-year sustainable water supply. Their plan involves modeling climate projections and population growth.
They develop forward-thinking engineers.
They implement resilient infrastructure, assess the daily usage patterns, reflect on minor leakage data, and learn by improving their predictive models. Over time, the character of that institution becomes one of extreme foresight.
And this isn't hypothetical. The text points to Singapore's anticipatory national water planning. They model decades ahead to build redundancy desalination, rainwater catchment, water recycling, long before scarcity ever becomes a crisis. They use the cycle to ensure survival.
And it spans the globe, scaling in completely different contexts. the text highlights Curitiba in Brazil.
Yes, their municipal transport system.
It's legendary because they didn't just build a subway and walk away. They used cyclical feedback between implementation and public assessment to create a highly adaptable bus rapid transit system that actually evolved alongside the changing needs of the neighborhoods.
We see it in education, too. Finland's school system develops teachers through continuous cycles of peer reflection and assessment.
Right, they aren't trying to force student compliance through rigid standardized testing.
Exactly, they are producing educators who improve their own craft through structured cyclical learning.
Or in the corporate world, you have Toyota, their famous Kaizen system, continuous improvement. Frontline workers are empowered to constantly assess, reflect, and refine the manufacturing process.
It builds operational excellence, yes, but it fundamentally builds the organizational character of Toyota.
It scales all the way down to participatory community budgeting in Porto Alegre, Brazil, where citizens propose, plan, and assess public spending, which builds massive civic trust over time.
It even scales down to the individual. Personal development, deliberate practice in athletics, or a musician mastering a complex concerto.
Oh, wow.
It's the exact same cycle of performing, getting honest feedback, reflecting on the flaw in your technique, and integrating corrections until the music becomes second nature.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. The sheer range of these examples is mind-blowing. You're using the exact same geometric framework to fix city sewer pipes, to manage a global pandemic, and to teach a violinist how to play Mozart.
It's universal.
But I have to challenge this again. If I just rigidly follow these 8 steps, task, plan, develop, implement, assess, reflect, learn, character, does the model guarantee I'll succeed? Is this a foolproof mathematical formula?
The author is incredibly careful to establish the vital caveats here. The diamond provides structure, but the content has to emerge from local knowledge and context. It is a guide, not a guarantee.
So you can't just drop the framework into a new city and expect it to run itself on autopilot.
Absolutely not.
You can't just process your way out of total ignorance. The framework isn't going to magically build a reservoir if nobody on your team knows basic math.
Exactly. As the text explicitly notes, water engineers still need to know hydraulics.
Right.
Furthermore, the framework is ultimately only as effective as the commitment of the people using it. You have to actually complete each cycle rigorously rather than performatively.
Meaning you can't just fake it.
Right. If a government goes through the motions of the assess and reflect stages, but ignores the data because it's politically inconvenient, the cycle is broken. The diamond does not eliminate political conflict, and it does not replace domain expertise.
It's like a gym routine. The printed routine itself doesn't make you strong. Actually doing the heavy lifting with good form makes you strong.
Exactly.
The diamond just ensures you're lifting the right weights in the right order so you don't tear a muscle.
And the author acknowledges that frameworks must evolve, just as civilizations evolve. The diamond is offered as an invitation for critique, testing, and refinement, not as some infallible religious text.
So let's bring this all together for you. We started by looking at this incredibly dangerous structural gap in our world today. The canyon between the beautiful, poetic ideals our institutions proclaim on their menus and the messy, often incompetent operational reality of their burning kitchens.
We saw how that gap causes fragility and stagnation, and how the diamond synthesis drawing from systems dynamics, cybernetics, and organizational learning offers a bridge.
By moving away from reactive, linear whack-a-mole thinking.
Right, and adopting a cyclical anticipatory framework, institutions can actually turn their abstract values into concrete behaviors.
We walked through the 8 stages, from task to implementation to learning, and saw how they apply to everything from Singapore's water supply to a musician's practice routine.
Yeah.
But the most profound takeaway from the preface in this first chapter, I think, is that step 8, the realization that character and integrity aren't just things you have or you don't, they are operational outcomes. They are built through rigorous, honest process.
It completely reframes how we should think about institutional health and personal development.
And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We've talked a lot about institutions and systems, but think about the people who run them.
Right.
If character and integrity are actually built through repeated cycles of action, honest feedback, and learning from failure, rather than just being inherent traits someone is born with, what does that mean for how we choose our leaders today?
That's a huge question.
Are we making a massive mistake by evaluating political candidates or CEOs based on their static ideals, their charisma, or their beautifully written speeches? Should we instead be demanding to see their proven capacity to complete the cycle to act, to honestly assess their own failures and to adapt.
It's a completely different metric for leadership.
Because right now, it feels like we spend all our time admiring the poetic language on the restaurant menu while completely ignoring the fact that the chef doesn't know how to turn on the stove. And eventually, everyone has to eat.
Indeed.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the beginnings of the Diamond Civilization. Take this 8-step cycle, map it onto a challenge in your own life this week, and see what happens when you treat character as a process. We'll catch you on the next one.